All right, so again, cross out number 3 because you don't need to do that one, okay? But we're going to do question number 1. We're going to do question number 4 eventually. 4 is going to be the last one we do, okay? Because that one's like the toughest one. But thankfully, notice that number 4, it has an x to the power of 4. That's the only one that has a fourth power other than 3, but 3 we're crossing it out. So we're going to do the hardest problem together, okay? But we'll do, I think, question 1, 5, and 10, and then go back to 4, all right? So let's start off with question number 1. And then from here, we'll kind of talk about what's been given to us and stuff like that. But you guys know, or you guys have been informed on how all this stuff works. I guess saying that everybody knows is kind of different because I'm not sure if everybody knows everything about how to do all this stuff. But you've been informed. So here are the directions for number 1. It says factor each one of these things, right? It says one root has been given. Find all the roots. In other words, they give us an equation. They want us to factor it. Now, if they want us to factor something with 4 terms, that usually requires grouping, and you got to do all this other stuff. There's a shortcut to factoring if you know an answer. They gave us an answer. They said 3 is a solution, okay? So since they tell us that 3 is a solution, they're saying, okay, we're going to give you one answer. Here's a function, okay? Find the rest of the answers. Now notice, this is a degree 3. So how many answers am I supposed to have? 3. I already got 1, so that means I'm searching for 2 more. Okay? So this is how you're going to do it. You're going to do synthetic division. That number 3, I'm actually going to put into the box. And you might say, well, why didn't he change the sign like he did yesterday? Right? Remember, yesterday we were dividing by, say, x plus 1. Or maybe we're dividing by x minus 2. So I told you, you got to change the sign of the number in there. Right? The number they're giving us is already the solution. So I don't need to flip any signs. Okay? When you flip the signs, you're actually trying to see if the numbers whose sign you flipped was an actual answer. They're saying this is an actual answer. So use that in your half box. Okay? So I'm not going to flip any signs. I am going to take the coefficients of, what do we have? 1, -2, -9, and 18. Now, they did say that 3 is a root, which means it's a 0, which means it's a solution, which means that when I do this, I better get a remainder of 0, because if I don't, then either I did something wrong or they're wrong in assuming that 3 is an answer. Okay? So I'm expecting to see a 0 for my remainder. Okay? So much so that I'm going to put it right now. And we'll double check. Let's see if that actually works. Okay, so I'm assuming there's going to be a 0 at the end because they said that's a root. So, okay, if it's a root, it's a 0. If it's a 0, my remainder is 0. All right, so let's do the work here. So I'm going to drop the 1, and 3 times 1 is 3. Then I add, -2 plus 3 is 1. And 3 times 1, again, is 3. I'll add those two together. -9 plus 3 is -6. And 3 times -6 is -18. And when you add 18 plus -18, we get 0. So sure enough, 3 is a solution. They said it was, and it is. Okay? So I'm going to rewrite my answer here that I got. I have a 1, and a -6. And then I start by writing down the powers, right? So instead of x cubed, I get to start with x squared plus x minus 6. So I'm just going to write it out nicely. X squared plus x minus 6. Now, if I can, let me just write here on the side. I'm going to put x equals 2. Here's a 3. I'm looking for 2 more answers. So I'm just going to leave that up there as a way for me to know, like, I'm going to write my answers right there. Okay? So let's see. I'm going to have to factor x squared plus x minus 6. So I'm going to use the x method. So I get the 1 times a -6 is a -6. A positive 1 goes here. So 2 numbers that multiply to -6 that add up to 1 will be a -2 and a positive 3. Those 2 numbers multiply to -6, they add up to 1. Now let me write down those factors. x minus 2, x plus 3. And remember, they said solve, so I'm going to set it equal to 0. I'm going to highlight that just so that when you guys are looking through the notes, if you happen to look through these notes, that's going to be a highlighted portion to say, look, this was different. Like, I did this to make it so that I can solve. So if I solve for x minus 2, sorry about that. If I solve for x minus 2 equal to 0 and x plus 3 equal to 0, I get x equal to 2 and x equal to negative 3. So those are my two other answers. Okay, I already had an answer of 3, but now I know my other answer is negative 3 and 2. So I'm just going to come back up here. Go to negative 3, 2, and that's my solution to this problem. Now, as you guys are writing this down, I want to make sure you guys understand that everything I did, you guys should have already done at some point in chapter 4. Okay? We've already solved for functions by factoring. Okay, we've now done synthetic division, right? We've used a quadratic formula, which you're going to use for number 10, but that's something that we've done before. We should understand how many solutions we're looking for based on the degree of the original problem. Number 1 has x to the third as the highest power, so I'm expecting 3 different answers, right? Whether or not they're 3 real numbers is a different story. Maybe they're not real, maybe some are imaginary, but still 3 solutions, okay? So that's question number 1. Again, you can see in the box 1, 2, 3 different answers for a power of 3. So that makes sense. Okay. So your steps, if you want to write steps down, step number 1, synthetic division. Step 2, write your answer. Step 3, factor. Step 4, solve. And that's how you're going to find everything. So it's 4 main steps you got to go through. So let's go over question number 5. I think it was 5. Yeah. So number 5, let me write this out. Y equals x cubed plus 3x squared minus 25x minus 75. And they say the solution is a negative 5. So they say negative 5 works. If you were to plug in negative 5 into that equation, you get 0. That's what they're telling us. Okay? So I'm going to get that negative 5. And I'm going to put it there. And I'm also going to just kind of on the side write x equals. And I'll put negative 5 as one of the answers. Okay? I'm still looking for how many more? 2 more, right? I need 3 total because that's an x cubed, right? This power of 3. But I need 2 more. So let me write down a 1, 3, negative 25, negative 75. And what I'm expecting to see at the very end, if this truly is a root, what should I see in this little half box down here? A 0. It better be a 0. If not, then something's wrong. I messed up or they messed up. So I would double check to make sure. I'm seeing a lot of people making little mistakes, and I'm not saying they're bad mistakes, but you know, when they drop the 1, like right here, let me show you an example of what I've been seeing a lot of. So a 1 here, and then I see negative 5 times 1, I'm seeing this. And they're like, I don't know what happened. My numbers are all weird. And I'm like, well, let's double check your multiplication and your addition. And there's always like a sign issue somewhere. And as soon as you mess up once, it messes everything else up. So you got to be careful, okay? So this should be a negative 5, right? Because negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Now, when you add this, 3 plus a negative 5, that's a negative 2. Okay? Now, negative 5 times a negative 2, that's a positive 10. And a negative 25 plus 10 is a negative 15. And negative 5 times a negative 15, 75. And negative 75 plus 75 is 0. So good. We're getting what we're supposed to. That should make you feel good about the work you did because that means you didn't mess up. Okay? Everything's working out okay. So now that I've done that, I'm going to write my answer out. Okay? So this would be a 1x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, that's my solution. That's my quotient. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do my x method and see if that works. So let's try doing the x method for this and see if it'll work. So we got negative 15 here, a negative 2 there. What two numbers can I use? All right, negative 5 and 3. Here, both of you guys there. And that should work, yeah, because negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. Negative 5 times a 3 is a negative 15. So I'm going to write that out. X minus 5, x plus 3. And remember, you set it equal to 0. Okay, I'm going to, again, highlight that because that's the key to this problem. You want to make sure you solve it. So you got to set it equal to 0. So get your two little equations here. X minus 5 equals 0. X plus 3 equals 0. So you get two answers. X is 5 and x is negative 3. So I have those two solutions on top of the negative 5. So that's basically 3 answers. So I'm going to put them right here. 5 and negative 3. I'm going to put them in a box here. And there we go. So those are my 3 solutions to this problem. Okay, so again, step 1, synthetic division. Step 2, wrote my answer. Step 3, factored. Step 4, solved. Right? So always 4 steps to do this stuff. Unless you have something like number 4, which we'll do at the end, because that one you have to factor first before you do anything else. So let's do one last one, and then we'll go to the one that's supposed to be the toughest one to do. But number 10. Now this one was actually chosen by 5th period. I asked them, which one do you want me to do? And they said number 10. I said, why? They said, because it's the last number, so obviously it's got to be the hardest one. Which isn't always true, but to be honest, I guess usually we try to save the hardest ones for the end of the test, right? But yeah, it's not always true. But notice this is a little different, okay? This says solve each equation if given one solution. The only difference between what they wrote here and the stuff we've done is that before it used to say like f of x equals this or y equals this. Now they're just saying here's that big equation and it's equal to 0. Don't let that freak you out. It's the same process. We're only going to work with this part when we do synthetic division. Just that. Okay, we're not going to do anything else. Just that piece like we've been doing normally. So here we go. I know that 5 is an answer. So I'm going to put it right there. Okay, I know that's already there. So I need 2 more. All right. So let's go ahead and put the 5 here. And a 1, a negative 7, a 12, and a negative 10. I'll put a plus here, a times there. Okay. So let's drop that 1 first. And multiply. So 5 times 1 is 5. Negative 7 plus 5 is a negative 2. 5 times a negative 2, that's a negative 10. 12 plus a negative 10, that's a 2. 5 times 2, that's a 10. And negative 10 plus 10, that's a 0. Again, that should not be a surprise because they told me 5 is an answer, so therefore it should be a 0 at the end. Okay? So, okay, great. We got a solution, which is what we're expecting to get, right? So I'm going to write 1x squared minus 2x plus 2. Okay, that's coming from right here. All right, 1x squared minus 2x plus 2. Now I'm going to try to factor this. So I get 1 times 2, that's 2. A negative 2 here. What 2 numbers multiply to 2 and add up to negative 2? What are my only options for 2? 2 and 1. Can those add up to 2? Or subtract to 2? No, because they're either going to add up to a 3 or a negative 3, or when you subtract them, you'll either get a 1 or a negative 1. There's no way you're going to get a negative 2. Okay? So that means you can't factor this normally. That means that you're going to have to use a quadratic formula. Okay? So I told, it was Aiden who picked number 10. I said, you picked a hard one, but good, because it's going to show you guys that they don't all just factor easily. So lucky for you guys, he picked a tough one, which means that you get, I don't know if there's another one. I haven't done these other three. But if there is another one, at least we already got rid of one of them that requires the quadratic formula. So here we go. ABC. My A is a 1, my B is a -2, and my C is a +2. Remember, the ABCs come from that statement, okay? It's AX squared plus BX plus C. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into this formula. Over 2A. Okay? And this is just kind of where it gets a little messy, right? So just be careful. So x is equal to a -b. If b is a -2, then a -b would be a +2. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. -2 squared is 4 minus 4 times 1 times 2 divided by 2 times a. That's 2 times 1, so that's a 2. Now notice inside of the radical, that's going to be 4 minus 8. So I'm going to get a -4. So 2 plus or minus the square root of -4 over 2. Yeah, 2, right? Imaginary numbers or complex numbers always come in pairs, right? So there's going to be 2 because you can see plus or minus, right? That's how you get your 2. So let's see. Let's simplify. 2 plus or minus. I'm going to take the negative out. Okay, so I took out the negative. So I put an I on the outside, and the square root of 4 is 2. So that's 2 plus or minus 2i over 2. And of course, they're going to want you to simplify. So everything can be divided by 2. So you're going to get x equal to 1 plus 1, plus or minus 1i. And there's 2 answers right there. Those are your 2 solutions that we were missing. 1 plus 1i, 1 minus 1i. All right, so let me just go back up to the original thing, then I'll come back down here. But let me just put this down. 1 plus or minus 1i. So those are my 3 solutions for this thing. There was one real solution, that's the number 5. And there were 2 imaginary solutions, okay? Or some people would say complex. Okay, so that's how we get the other 2. So I'll go back down here really quick so you guys can see that in case you're writing it down. So this is a pretty lengthy problem, but so is number 4. Like I said, we'll do number 4 just to get that out of the way for you guys. That way you guys just have to worry about doing number 2 in the front and, what is it, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 5 problems. Any questions on the quadratic formula with this one? So just take your time when you do it. You know, the more you do it, the easier it is to kind of do stuff in your head. If you just take your time, you should be able to get it done right. So, all right, last one, and this one, it's not that it's a really difficult problem. I think number 10 was actually harder than number 4, but this one's just a little different. The fact that number 4 has, I don't even know why I put example number 4, I'm sorry, just number 4, f of x equal to x to the 4th. So notice how this has a 4th power. And the fact that it has a 4th power, and I don't know if you noticed that, but that everything has the letter x on it, right? There's an x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, an x squared, and an x to the 1st. Everything has an x. So the very first thing you want to do is factor out an x. So this is what you end up with. Okay? You get x times x cubed minus 6x squared minus x plus 30. So I just took 1 out. Once I do that, I can focus only on this piece right here. I don't have to worry about this last piece because they want us to solve, so they want us to set it equal to 0. Okay? But based on what I have in front of me right now, I already know that x has to equal 0 because since there are 2 factors, this is what it looks like. I can write x equals 0 or x cubed minus 6x squared minus x plus 30 equals 0. Right? That's something from Algebra 1. It's called the zero product property. That means when you have two things multiplied and they're equal to 0, you can set each one of them equal to 0. So that's what I just did. So notice one of my answers, I'm going to put it right here, is -2. We saw that earlier. The other one is 0 from here. X equals 0. So I'm just looking for two more. Okay, I'm looking for two more. Now, since they told me that -2 was a solution, I'm going to use that -2 to do synthetic division on that piece right there. Okay, so the answer is going to divide the longer expression. So here we go. -2, 1, -6, -1, and 30. Now remember what I told you guys. You will not have to do a problem like this on your homework because there's only 2 and one of them we took out, right? Number 3 is not one you have to do. So you're just doing 4, which we're doing together. So go ahead, do me a favor. I'm going to wait for you guys. Go ahead and finish this thing. Not all of it, but... All right, so now what you're going to have to do is bring down the 1. Multiply out. -2 times 1 is a -2. And then add those two numbers, right? Because we add above the line. So this would be a -8. Now multiply -2 times a -8. That's a 16. And when you add -1 plus 16... we get 15. Now, -2 times 15 is -30. Add those together, you get a 0. So again, our result is a remainder of 0, which is good. That means that -2 actually is a solution to this problem. So let's write out our solution. 1x squared minus 8x plus 15. That's coming from right here. And let's factor it out. So if I were to factor out that, I'm going to do the x method right here on the left side. 1 times 15 is 15. The -8 goes here. So we can use a -3 and a -5 as our solution. So x minus 3, x minus 5 equals 0. So x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 5 equals 0, which implies that x must be 3 or x must be 5. So we'll put those two answers here. Now I have my 4 solutions. Remember, since the original problem had a power of 4, that means that I should have a maximum 4 solutions, okay? I can have any combination of reals and complex, but they have to be a total of 4. So go ahead and work on the homework, and remember that's going to be due on Friday.